When it comes to concrete, we've got you covered. RowPaint.com offers custom concrete coating services for your garage, business, warehouse, and more. And we do it in one day. We are your complete concrete coatings solution.
Well, greetings, Boise State fans. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on YouTube, if you're listening to the audio version that we post to the podcast later in the day, this is archived as well. So some of you folks, or most folks, usually catch it on the replay later. BJ Rains here with you, the Idaho Press, BlueTurfSports.com. Really excited to talk about this game today. Quick thank you to our two sponsors, RowPaint.com, as you just heard, the official paint and coatings company of Boise State Athletics, and Ridley's Family Markets at 12 Idaho locations. You get more information, shop Ridleys.com. Very appreciative of my friend Rich Waltz. I can call you a friend, right? Rich, got to know you the last couple of years here, and it's been fun. Rich Waltz will be on the call, CBS Sports Network on Saturday, Boise State at Colorado State. Rich, looking forward to I don't get to hear you live because I'm at the game, but I'll be watching the replay later. But glad you're on the call this week. Good to chat with you. How are you?
I'm good, and I'm motivated to get my garage floor done now after watching that.
I've got mine done. If you want to see it, it is pretty nice, actually.
Yeah. My garage is a mess. There's not enough room to do that, but impressive stuff. No, it's a it's a fascinating game for me. The Colorado State meltdown at the end of last week, their special teams trouble against Boise State last year. Boise State to me seems like a team that's better than their record. So I'm really curious to see how that plays out. And I think I've had the last two times Boise has been in Fort Collins, including that crazy comeback with the onside kick and Rippon's great march down the field and all that. So I'm excited about it.
You did the Boise State game earlier this year when they were in Logan against Utah State. You've obviously watched their other games as well to get ready for this. What is your take on the state of Boise State right now? 3-4 for the first time, since like 1997. They've lost 3 at home for the first time since 1996. I mean, not great when you're going back to the Houston Nutt era for a lot of your stats here for Boise State fans. But fans aren't used to this at Boise State. They're used to winning all their games, and now they're, with still 5 games left, in need of a win just to stay alive in the division race here. What's your take on the 3-4 Broncos at this point?
Like I said, I think they're a better team than their record, but that doesn't matter because the record is the record. An ambitious non-conference schedule, a few plays here or there, and they get wins at UCF and at home against Oklahoma State. The Air Force game wasn't a real surprise to me. Air Force is, I've had them twice this year. I think they're really, really good. And you fall behind them, it's really hard to scramble back because of the lack of time of possession and the lack of opportunity. Look, I think one of the things nationally that people don't realize about Boise State, unless you're in the Mountain West and see them on a weekly basis on Saturdays, traditionally, people nationally see Boise State as a team, the trick plays, fun offense, gadget stuff, throw it around. But when it comes down to it, Boise State has always had a great running attack. I mean, they've put, I believe, 4 guys in the NFL and guys that have had success in the NFL, and they just don't have that right now. And when you don't have that, the ability to just line up and get yourself 2 or 3 yards when you really need it, that affects everything. That affects play calling. That affects, how you control the game. So, that's a different wrinkle to me than a usual Boise State game. Usually when I do a Boise State game, you're writing down a 100-yard a game rusher, and then you're going back and talking about the last 4 guys that have been in the NFL and all of that. They just don't have that right now. And I don't think it's, people look at the coaching change, right? They look at new offensive coordinator. They look at new head coach. And they you draw a line from there to there. But I don't think it's that easy. I think it's personnel at this point in time. Maybe they just don't have that runner. Maybe that offensive line isn't as healthy or as good as it has been. and the change in coordinators. There's some aspect of that as well. I remember going to the Utah State game, and in our meetings with Tim Plow, the offensive coordinator, and he talked about the lack of running game, and he said it's on me, and I've got to be really creative to figure out how to run. And in that game, that's one of the most creative run games I've ever seen. Everybody, I think there was one point late in the first quarter or early in the second quarter where 6 or 7 different Broncos had carried the football, from wide receivers to quarterbacks to running backs to, direct snap to somebody. So that's hard to pull that off on a weekly basis when you can't just line up and run it and get yourself 3, 4, 5 yards a clip.
Well, the numbers, Rich, Boise State fans do. They're not good. Boise State 129th out of 130 teams, 2.42 yards per carry. They're 126th out of 130, just 84.2 rushing yards per game. The rushing numbers are not good. I wrote about it in today's paper, and you're totally right. I mean, there's 44 players in the country that have more rushing yards than Boise State does as a team. And there's 3 teams that have 2 players. 3 teams have 2 players that have more rushing yards by themselves than Boise State has as a team. And,
Right.
the Boise State, as you said, had a 1,000-yard rusher 11 years in a row. It was like tied for the second longest streak in history. And it is very weird to see. And they keep saying that, all bye week, Boise State's coming off a bye. And they said that they really just spent a lot of the time and during the bye week focusing on that running game. I think they hinted that they might be getting a little healthier. In the last game, they didn't have Cyrus Abibi-Likio or George Jelani. So
Yes.
that is, I know they don't want to make excuses, but when you're on your number 3 tailback, it's not exactly, should be expecting the same results as when you have a 1,000-yard rusher in there. So that has played a factor. The offensive line, I think, has, gone through some different combinations, but they did say they spent a lot of time on it. And Joe Nickel, the great statistician, SID over at Boise State, was quick to point out yesterday to us that in the last 3 games, when they've had the current O-line, the actual running backs taking carries, they're averaging 4.12 yards a carry. So they feel like they're making some small improvements, but you're right. It is weird. And it, you haven't talked to Coach Avalos or the coordinators yet this week, but it does sound like to me that they're going to put a huge emphasis on running the football this week. But, oh, by the way, Colorado State ranks number 15 in the country in stopping the run. So that is going to be an interesting element to this game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Colorado State's strengths, it's certainly their defense and their defensive front. I think they have 29 sacks. They had 8 sacks last week. They've always been a hard-nosed football team on both sides of the ball. And Steve Adazio's, his pedigree is offensive line play and run the football, and that's gone from Boston College to here. They're just. It's really hard to put your finger on them. They did not start the season out well. Then they had some nice wins, and then last week they were, they just kept falling behind despite 8 sacks, and they had the meltdown at the end. They had an opportunity to win that football game. So I mean, that the whole running the football thing, like I said, it's it's part of its health. Part of it might be personnel and keeping your running backs healthy, keeping your offensive line healthy. And then sometimes you fall behind the change, you fall behind the in a game, and you don't have the time to establish a running game. You got to throw it to get back. So I don't think the state of Bronco football is in disarray at all. I think that it's in pretty good hands. You've got a head coach in his first. One of the things I really like about Andy Avalos is, especially at UCF and the Oklahoma State losses, he was front and center with, this is on me. This is not, anybody's fault. This is, I'll take the heat here. For a young coach to do that and step up and do that, that's a good thing. And look, he's learned under the best at Boise State. He is Boise State. So I think the Broncos are going to have a really nice second half, and I'm not worried about their program at all.
Yeah, they had a big 4th and 2 late in that game against Air Force, and they only had 10 players on the field, which is something that's just unheard of. And he, that's not the head coach's job to count how many players are in the huddle, but he took full blame for that and said, that's on me. I've got to make sure there are 11 guys out there. And I think that was a play where Boise State fans were kind of like, okay, what's going on here? We're losing games. We don't even have 11 guys on the field. They were letting punts hit them. They're just making careless mistakes. And, you said the program is in good hands. Hank Bachmeier told us yesterday. He says, people may laugh, but we're 5 or 6 plays away from being undefeated right now. I mean, they think that the margin is just so close when you look at the whistle in the Oklahoma State game and some of the other things that have happened. But as was it Bill Parcells that said, "You are what your record says you are." I mean, they're 3-4 right now and fighting just to get to a bowl game, which is crazy.
Yeah, we talked to Hank yesterday as well, and Khalil Shakir as well about the offense. And they're positive, and I think he's right. I mean, college football is different than any of the other sports in that it's just one game a week, and it's 12 opportunities. And basketball, you're playing 30, at least 30 games. Baseball in the major leagues, you're playing 162. You can have a bad week and go 1-5 and then turn it around over the next month. You don't have that opportunity in football. You have a play or two that goes the other way, and it's hard to recover from that and to be where you want to be, which is, you want to be 11-1 at the end of the year and winning championships and stuff like that. So, Bachmeier's, look at Hank's numbers. He is playing at a really high level.
Well, not according to Nicholas here. Nicholas in our live comment wants him benched. Horrible, still no quarterback change.
Look,
how many losses do we need? How many times does he have to fall apart under pressure? Can't wait until he's gone. You'd be surprised, Rich. There actually is a small faction of people that think Hank Bachmeier is the problem with this team, which is crazy.
Well, I mean, he can't run for 150 yards a game. He's completing 65% of his passes. He's thrown some untimely interceptions, certainly at the end of the Utah or the Air Force game, and the scramble pick at UCF. But
Oklahoma State, he had a bad one too. I mean, those are the three that people will point to.
I don't think he's the problem right now. That's just my opinion. But look, I mean, fans, Boise State fans are great. They fill the stadium. They watch the games. They have a right to be. I don't know, disgruntled, but disappointed is probably a good word. I think but I don't think a fan is any more disappointed than anybody wearing a uniform on Saturdays and coaching on Saturdays. I think those guys are pretty darn disappointed as well.
Well, let's quickly touch on Colorado State and your thoughts on them before we get out of here. I mean, they're a team, as you said, that could have won a game last week. If folks didn't see it, there was a chance at a last-second field goal that they had a chance at, and there was a whole debacle, like we said, with people blaming folks in the media. Now that they're not doing any media till the game Saturday, I mean, they could have won that game. They could be 4-3. And if anybody needs I know Boise State is 10-0 all time against Colorado State. Colorado State's the only team in the Mountain West that has not beaten Boise State ever. But I think the only thing you needed to know about this game was when the point spread came out, it was 3. I mean, for a Boise State team to only be favored by 3 points over Colorado State, I know, more things go into it than that, but I think that tells you all you need to know about they're expecting this to be a close game down to the wire. And you look at Colorado State's numbers defensively, they're not giving up many points, not giving up many yards. We talked about what they're doing, against the run, which has been a problem for Boise State. This is a very sneaky, tough game. I mean, if Boise State loses this one, they're going to have a tough time getting to 6 wins for a bowl, but this is a game you think that they have to win. How do you look at what Colorado State brings to the table and being at home and just this game?
Well, Boise State's played really well there. I talked about the last 2 games. One was in the snow, and the other was that incredible comeback. I think that game took 5 hours to play. I think going to Fort Collins for Boise State is not a big deal in terms of they're used to that. They're used to going in there and winning games, and there's enough guys that have gone in there and been part of those wins that I don't know that that's a factor. I think one factor for Boise State defensively is how do you stop McBride, the tight end. Yeah. Trey McBride I was just writing numbers down, 55 catches for a tight end. The one interesting
which by the way, for Boise State fans, Khalil Shakir, who seems like he catches every pass, only has 40. So for Khalil Shakir to have 40 and McBride to have 55 in the same number of games tells you all you need to know.
Here's the weird thing about McBride. He's got 1 touchdown, though. So, most tight ends. And may I say that the Mountain West has 4 NFL tight ends right now? I mean, Bellinger at San Diego State, Deese at San Jose State, McBride, and where's my next
Cole
one?
Turner.
Thank you, Cole Turner at Nevada. I haven't seen Nevada this year. all four of those guys are different, but all four of those guys are really, really good. We talked as well with JL Skinner yesterday too. He's the guy, a safety that's 6'4". Automatically, he's the guy that ends up most of the time on a tight end. And he said McBride he's like a running back and a wide receiver in a tight end's body. He's got that type of speed and that type of agility. So that's one of the things I'm interested to watch. How does Boise State negate McBride? Can they stop the downhill running attack Colorado State? I think they can. Can they move the ball? I think they can. I do. I think again, I go back to that Utah State game. They're going to have to be creative with how they run the ball. It can't just be between the tackles. It's going to be Shakir on a fly sweep and motioning into a run or a pitch or something like that. Special teams, right? I mean, go back to last year. You block 2 punts and a field goal and take them back for touchdowns. And Colorado State's special teams obviously took a big hit last week. That's an issue. I mean, that's a big issue to me in this game is the battle of the special teams. Boise State's special teams are pretty solid. Kickers are good. Return guys are good. They've returned a punt for a touchdown. They're one of the few schools that has returned a kickoff and a punt for a touchdown, I think, in 5 consecutive seasons. And now they've got the punt. They just need the kickoff to make it 6 in a row. So I think special teams is huge. I think Boise State's going to move the football. I'm curious to see how Colorado State reacts to not just the loss, but the way they lost the game and the aftermath of that loss, which was pretty messy on Saturdays and Sunday.
Well, as I said, Steve Adazio in his press conference yesterday started by mentioning that they were 0-10, and they're well aware of that against Boise State all time. So you factor in them wanting to beat Boise State for the first time ever, being at home, being pissed off about what happened last week. I think you're going to get Colorado State's best effort in this game. And Boise State, I mean, they've proven they don't have, they used to be able to just show up and beat teams, and that's not the case anymore. They've got to play well, and I think this is a very interesting, dangerous game for Bronco Nation.
Well, I'll say this too for Bronco Nation and for everybody in the Mountain West. This is as good as the Mountain West has been that I've ever seen. I mean, it is deep. And a lot of it has to do with COVID and seniors coming back, teams deep, transfers coming in, looking for a chance to play. That certainly helped Utah State. This is as good as the Mountain West has been. I mean, look at how I don't have to tell you how good Nevada is right now. I've seen San Diego State a couple times. That's the best San Diego State defense I've ever seen. And that's saying something. This is a really, really deep Mountain West. So Air Force, that's the best start since that coach has been there. Since Calhoun has been there, that's their best start. That's the best Air Force team I've ever seen. So it's really ridiculously deep and good right now. I don't know if I'm sure that's some factor with Boise State's start. It's not the whole story, but I think it does play a role in this.
Well, it should be an interesting game. You've been to Boise for basketball, but because of the TV contracts, the CBS Sports doesn't get the home games. You've never done a football game on the Blue, right?
No. The very first football game I called was at Boise State.
Oh, okay.
I was a student broadcaster. I had finished my baseball career at UC Davis. And I decided I wanted to be a broadcaster. And so I was fortunate enough to talk my way into doing play-by-play on the student station. And UC Davis opened the season at Boise State. In fact, I think Chris Peterson was the quarterback. So that was my first game. And then my first big job in television was the Big Sky Game of the Week. And Boise State was in the Big Sky at the time.
Okay.
I'm old, so it go back a ways. So and then I did a few games at ESPN at Boise State before I went east and became the TV voice of the Marlins. And at that time, I was in the SEC and the ACC doing football and basketball. So I've done games on the blue turf. I've done games at Boise State. It's just been a while, but look, I know Boise State history really well because the two guys that were key in this history I was classmates with Dan Hawkins and Chris Peterson. So I'm proud of that heritage, the UC Davis heritage. Obviously, I'm hopeful that Tim Plow has success. I think he will. Bachmeyer raved about him yesterday in our conversation. So I love Boise. That's a great. I was talking to Aaron Goldsmith earlier this year, and he hadn't done a game in Boise, and I just told him it's a great atmosphere. It's a great college town, and I'm just so amazed when I come back and I've done basketball there, just to see the buildings on campus, just to see the growth of the city, just to see the facilities, the football facilities, the workout facilities, the athletic facilities. Everything that has grown since I started as a broadcaster back in the Big Sky days for Boise, just is so impressive. I mean, even just going downtown and looking at all the different restaurants and shops and stores, and it's like, man, this town it's a great place to come do a game. I wish I could come do football. But I do have a basketball game there in my early schedule. I think I've got the Santa Clara game.
Nice.
In mid-December. And Leon's group is going to be really good this year. So my guess is when I get my conference schedule for January, February, and early March, I'll be there at least a couple of times. So I'm a huge Boise fan. There should be a great bar early in the Big Sky days. Was it Humpin' Hannah's?
It's still going.
That's still there?
I think the same gal's still up there on the stage singing too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So
but
look,
no.
I'm aware.
Well, appreciate it. And you've got a couple more Boise State games, right? Are you doing the Fresno State game as well? And then I believe, do you have the San Diego State game the day after Thanksgiving?
No and yes. Okay. On the Fresno game.
Okay.
Yes, on the San Diego State game, which should be crazy good. It'd be an early start in LA. It's a 9 a.m. kick, 10 o'clock Boise time. So yeah, I've got them two more times. And look, again, you're upset. You should be. You're disgruntled or disappointed. Yeah, I get that. You should be as well. I think this team's better than their record, and hopefully for Boise State, they show that the second half of the season.
Well, should be exciting. It's 5 o'clock Mountain Time. It'll be yourself, Aaron Taylor, and Jenny Dell on the call. 5 o'clock CBS Sports Network on Saturday. Really appreciate your time, Rich. Hope we get a chance to bump into you there in Fort Collins, and really appreciate your insight. And I know Boise State fans were excited when they saw, you're the voice of the Mountain West this year. So I think congrats on that. And I know fans were excited to see this crew was doing the game.
And I'm sorry about your Cardinals, by the way.
Oh, that was a rough one. That was
they had a better year than the Angels, though.
We had them to the ninth inning, and we had them, but I'm rooting for the Braves now. I'd like to see the Braves win the World Series. I don't really care too much for the Astros, but
it's a good story. You got two good old school manager and pitching coach, and Rick Kranitz is a guy that I know, and Snitker certainly is. You root for someone who's paid his dues. But on the other side, I'm a big Dusty Baker fan.
Yeah, it's tough.
This is a weird thing. This is a weird World Series for me because I don't. It's like I look more at the managers and the coaches than the players. Houston's somewhat unlikable because of the cheating scandal.
Yep.
The Braves, when I was in Miami, they were certainly a bitter rival, so there's a little bit of that. But I like Snitker a lot. I like Kranitz a lot, and I really love Dusty Baker. I'd love to see him win because I think he's a Hall of Fame manager right now. This, to me, would seal the deal for him. He's been so important in the game, especially with, minority players, with black players, his ties to there's a great MLB Network special on what he went through just getting to the big leagues, playing in Atlanta early in his career, the influence of Henry Aaron, things that he has stood up for in his as he's gone on as a manager. So everywhere he's gone, people have just loved him.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry to get off the.
No, we could go. I could go all day with you, Rich. We could talk all kinds of sports. I appreciate your time, and again, we'll be watching, listening 5 o'clock on Saturday on Mountain Time on CBS Sports Network, and good luck on the call, and hope we get a chance to bump into each other.
All right, thanks, BJ.
There he is. Rich Waltz does a great job on the play-by-play. Thanks for checking out the Bronco Report. Special thanks again, rowpaint.com, Ridley's Family Markets. Have a good rest of your week. We will take care. Coverage coming all week. Idaho Press, BlueTurfSports.com. And again, Saturday, 5 o'clock, Boise State at Colorado State on the CBS Sports Network. Thanks, and take care.